Someone dragged this janitor out of my gala. People like him don't belong among my guests. Ma'am, the guest stumbled into me. I was doing my job. Your job? Kneel down and scrub that carpet now. Use your jacket if you have to. Oops, my champagne slipped. Look at you. Even the rag needs a rag. You're fired. Victor, search his bag. His kind always steals souvenirs. You should be careful what you fire, Miss Hargrove. Laughter rippled through the crowd. A threat. How adorable. Out. Good morning, Miss Hargrove. Please sit. You look pale. Your security team works for me now. I own the majority of this company. Your chair and your job. Impossible. You're a janitor. I stayed long enough to see who you really are. Have you ever been judged by your uniform instead of your worth? This is how a janitor erased a CEO's empire. Early in the morning, downtown Atlanta, the Hartwell Logistics Tower stood tall, its glass still holding the last shadows of night. Inside the lobby, one man worked alone. Marcus Hale, in his gray uniform with sleeves rolled to the elbow, moved his mop across the marble in long, patient strokes. The scent of lemon cleaner drifted through the cool air. Somewhere above him, an air vent hummed its single low note. He paused at the east hallway and looked down at the stone. Decades earlier, a woman named Eleanor Hale had cleaned the same floor. She worked nights and double shifts, her swollen ankles wrapped in simple bandages. She raised her son on a janitor's paycheck and a library card. On Marcus's wrist sat her watch, a small thing with a cracked leather band. It had stopped ticking long ago, yet he wore it anyway. As the building began to wake, Marcus greeted every soul who came through the doors. He knew the night guard, Mr. Ellis, whose daughter had a piano recital coming up. He knew Ms. Caldwell in the kitchen took her coffee with 3 sugars. People in gray uniforms learn a building's heartbeat. Nobody ever asks them what they hear. 2 elevators ran the tower. The glass one carried suits and visitors. The steel one in the back carried mops, food carts, and people the suits never noticed. Marcus rode the steel one. He listened. In the months that followed, he learned more from that back elevator than any report could reveal. Drivers shorted on overtime, a dispatcher crying in the stairwell, names that vanished from the schedule after they spoke up. One morning, his phone buzzed in the supply room. He closed the door before answering. A woman's voice came through, crisp and careful. The deal closes soon. The signatures are ready. Are you sure you still want to stay invisible? Marcus looked at the shelf of bleach bottles and folded rags. 1 more week, he said. I need to see who they are when no one is watching. He slid the phone into his pocket and picked up the mop again. Later that morning, Vivian Hargrove pushed through the revolving doors like a storm, heels clicking, sunglasses on, phone pressed to her ear. She cut straight across the wet floor Marcus had just finished. Black heel prints bloomed over the shine. She never looked down. She never looked at him. She drained her espresso and, without breaking stride, tossed the cup toward the bin Marcus was wheeling. It bounced off the rim and rolled across the marble. She kept walking. Marcus bent down, picked up the cup, and wiped the drips with a rag. The elevator swallowed her. Up on her floor, her corner office overlooked much of the city. Vivian Hargrove, chief executive for years. Investors loved her numbers. Magazines loved her smile. Her assistants lasted only months on average. The people who emptied her trash knew a different woman. They tracked her moods like storm warnings, whispered from floor to floor before she arrived. That week, the whole tower buzzed about one thing, the Hargrove Charity Summer Gala. Every summer, Vivian took over the company estate outside the city. She hung thousands of lights in the oak trees and invited hundreds of the richest names in Georgia. Officially, the gala raised money for underprivileged children. Unofficially, it raised Vivian, her photo with every senator, her name on every check, her face in every frame. In the service hallway, a sheet asked for gala support staff. Extra hands, extra pay, 1 long night. Marcus wrote his name at the bottom of the list. The floor supervisor frowned when she saw it. You sure about this? Miss Hargrove gets loud at her parties. Marcus clicked the pen closed. I have heard loud before, Horny said. I want to see it up close. Saturday evening arrived dressed in gold. The sun dropped low over the estate, and the first limousines rolled up the gravel drive. Marcus buttoned his service jacket in a staff tent that smelled of canvas and cut grass. Through the flap, he watched waiters carry towers of champagne glasses across the lawn. A string quartet tuned up. Laughter sharpened. Hundreds of guests, thousands of lights, and one janitor nobody planned to notice. The night had no idea what it was carrying. The estate glowed like something out of a dream. Thousands of lights hung in the oak trees, dripping gold over the lawn. A string quartet played under a white pavilion. Waiters in black moved between the tables, carrying lobster canapes and crystal flutes. Georgia's richest laughed under the summer sky. Senators, bankers, television anchors, and at the center of it all, in an emerald gown, stood Vivian Hargrove, glowing brighter than her own lights. Marcus worked the edge of the party. His job was simple: restock the service stations, clear the empty trays, keep the back lanes moving. He carried crates of glasses from the trucks to the prep tent. He hauled ice. He swept broken glass near the bar before anyone stepped on it. Sweat rolled down his back under the service jacket. He did not mind. Watching a machine run, you learn where it squeaks. In the prep tent, he met Sophie Ramirez, a young catering server saving for college. She moved fast and apologized to everyone, even the furniture. Marcus helped her lift a tray she could barely balance. "You're the man from the tower," she said. "The one who knows everybody's birthday." Marcus smiled. "Only the ones that matter, which is everybody's." She laughed for the first time all night. Later, Vivian took the stage. The spotlight found her like an old friend. She spoke about giving back, about lifting up the forgotten, about how charity was the duty of the blessed. Her voice trembled in all the practiced places. Hundreds of phones rose to record her. Behind the pavilion, Marcus stacked chairs and listened to a woman describe a kindness he had never once seen her practice. The auction raised millions in minutes. A vacation home in Aspen. A weekend on a yacht named after Vivian's mother. Guests bid with a paddle in one hand and bourbon in the other. On the stage screen, photos of smiling children rotated on a loop. Nobody asked their names. The children were wallpaper. The money was applause converted into a currency Vivian could wear. Then the auction wound down and the champagne flowed harder. Near the main floor, a service station ran out of glasses. A waiter waved Marcus over. He lifted the tray high and started across the edge of the dance floor. Lights spun. Perfume hung thick as fog. He was steps from the station when it happened. A heavy-set man in a tuxedo stepped backward, laughing at his own joke, a whiskey in each hand. His shoulders slammed into the tray. Glasses of red wine took flight. They came down on the white runner carpet, on the hem of a silver dress, on Marcus's sleeve. The crash cut through the music like a gunshot. The quartet stopped. Hundreds of heads turned. The man who caused it melted into the crowd without a word. Marcus was already kneeling, gathering glass with steady hands, stacking shards onto the tray. The woman in the silver dress dabbed her hem and said it was fine. Truly, it was nothing. It could have ended there. A mop, a towel, quiet minutes. But a spotlight was already swinging across the lawn. Vivian crossed the floor with her microphone still in hand. She looked at the stain. She looked at Marcus kneeling in it, and she smiled the way a cat smiles at a cornered bird. She raised the microphone, and her voice rolled over the entire estate. "Well, well, ladies and gentlemen, look at this. The help is redecorating my carpet." Laughter rippled thin and nervous. Marcus rose to his feet. "Ma'am," the guest stumbled into me. "I was doing my job. I'll have this cleaned soon." Vivian's eyebrows climbed. She turned to her audience, delighted. "Did you hear that? It talks back." She let the laughter build, then tilted her head at him. "Tell me your name, sweetheart." Slowly, "So we can all hear who ruined my gala." "Marcus Hale. Facilities. Night shift. Facilities." She tasted the word like spoiled milk. "And who told facilities it could walk through my guests? You smell like a hardware store. You were staining the air more than the carpet." A few guests shifted. Most kept their phones up. In the catering line, Sophie Ramirez raised hers too, hands shaking, and pressed record. She gestured at the stain spreading under the lights. "Do you have any idea what this carpet costs? Hand-woven Italian. That is more than you make in a year, isn't it?" She did not wait for an answer. "Of course it is. And now it is wearing your incompetence." Her voice dropped into something colder. "My mother always said you can dress up a mop. It is still a mop." Vivian stepped closer. The emerald gown whispered against the floor. "You want to keep this job? Then kneel down and scrub that carpet. Now, use your jacket if you have to." The crowd went very still. Marcus looked at the stain, then at her. He knelt, not because he was broken, but because some men can kneel without ever bowing. He folded a towel and worked the wine in slow circles. Vivian watched him for a moment. Then she lifted a fresh glass of champagne from a passing tray. She held it out over his head and tipped it slowly all the way. Golden liquid ran through his hair, down his collar, into the carpet he was cleaning. "Oops," she said into the microphone. "My champagne slipped. Look at you. Even the rag needs a rag." This time, nobody laughed. Somewhere in the back, a fork was set down. A camera flash went off. Near the stage, an older board member named Harold Whitaker lowered his drink and did not pick it up again. His jaw tightened. He had seen executives behave badly for decades. He had never seen anything quite like this. In the service line, a waiter leaned toward Sophie. "Somebody should stop this," he whispered. Nobody did. Hundreds of the most powerful people in Georgia stood under the charity lights and studied their shoes. A senator checked his watch. A banker reached for another drink. The lawn stayed very, very quiet. Marcus rose, champagne dripping from his chin. He set the towel down, squared his shoulders, and faced her. The silence stretched tight enough to hum. Vivian mistook it for victory. She always did. She turned to the crowd, arms wide, a ringmaster in emerald. "People like him clean messes," she announced. "They don't belong among my guests. And as of tonight, he doesn't belong among my employees either." She spun back to Marcus and let each word fall like a blade. "You're fired. Not by email, not by letter, right here in front of everyone. Consider it charity. It is the only kind you'll ever touch." She snapped her fingers toward the security line. "Victor, someone dragged this janitor out of my gala." Victor Kane came through the crowd like a wall in a suit. Head of corporate security, Vivian's favorite shadow. 2 guards flanked him. He gripped Marcus's arm hard enough to bruise. Marcus did not pull away. He looked past Kane straight at Vivian and spoke in a voice low enough that the microphone barely caught it. "You should be careful what you fire, Miss Hargrove." For half a second, something flickered behind her eyes. Then the champagne and the spotlight washed it away. She laughed into the microphone. A threat. How adorable. Out. The quartet struck up a waltz on her signal. Bright and forced, the party lurched back to life like an engine missing a cylinder, and 2 guards walked Marcus Hale across the longest lawn in Georgia. The walk to the gate took minutes. Marcus kept his spine straight the whole way. Champagne dried sticky on his neck. Gravel crunched under 3 sets of shoes. Behind him the waltz played on, but the laughter never quite found its footing again. Guests parted as he passed, eyes sliding away, the way people avoid looking at an accident they helped cause. They were near the gate when Kane's radio crackled. Vivian's voice came through it, bright with champagne. "One more thing, Victor. Check his bag. His kind always steals souvenirs." Kane smiled for the first time all night. He held up one hand and the procession stopped under the iron archway. "You heard the lady," he said. "Open it." Sophie Ramirez stood frozen behind the catering table, her phone still recording, her heart slamming against her ribs. She had captured all of it. The kneeling, the champagne, the firing. Footage that would be worth more than every check written at that gala. She did not know that yet. Neither did Vivian. The only person on that lawn who understood what had been set in motion was the man under the archway. He stood calmly, waiting for them to open his bag. Kane yanked the canvas bag off Marcus's shoulder and turned it upside down. Everything Marcus owned at that job hit the gravel. A dented lunchbox, a thermos with a taped handle, a paperback copy of an old novel, spine cracked white, and a photograph in a plastic sleeve face down beside the iron gate. Phones leaned closer. Somewhere on the lawn, a woman whispered, "Is this really necessary?" Nobody answered her. Kane crouched and pawed through it all with 2 fingers like the items might bite. No silverware, no crystal, no stolen bottle of wine. He shook the lunchbox, opened the thermos, flipped the paperback by its spine, and let the pages fan out. Nothing fell out except a grocery receipt. The crowd by the gate began to look at each other. The show was running long, and there was no ending in sight. Then he reached the photograph. He held it up to the string lights. A woman in a cleaning uniform smiling in a marble hallway, a bucket at her feet. The Hartwell lobby, years earlier. Eleanor Hale mid-laugh, caught by a co-worker's camera. Kane snorted. "Family business, huh?" He flicked the photo away like a cigarette. It spun twice and landed face down on the gravel. For the first time that night, Marcus moved fast. Not at Kane, past him. He knelt on the gravel, picked up the photograph, and wiped the dust from it with his sleeve. The champagne stains on his collar, the wine on his cuff. None of it had touched his face. This did. His jaw worked once, twice. Then he slid the photo inside his shirt against his chest and stood back up. Satisfied? Marcus asked. His voice stayed level, but it had gravel in it. Now Kane straightened, found nothing, and hated it. Get off the property, he said. If I see you near the tower, I'll have you arrested. The gates groaned open. Marcus gathered his things from the ground, one by one, taking his time. Then he walked through the archway and into the dark, and the iron clanged shut behind him. He walked the shoulder of the road for a while before reaching his car. Heat lightning flickered in the west. Behind him, the music swelled and the toasts went on. He did not look back again. Back on the lawn, Vivian retook the stage with a fresh glass. The night needed a bow, and she intended to tie it herself. Friends, forgive the interruption, she said, but let it remind us why we are here. She gestured toward the gate. Some people are born to be lifted. Others are born to do the lifting and should be grateful for the work. Tonight we give because giving is what separates us from them. Us from them. The phrase hung over the lawn like smoke. A few guests applauded because applause was easier than thinking. Harold Whitaker did not clap. He set his napkin on the table, told his wife he needed air, and walked the gravel path alone. Decades on corporate boards teaches a man to read a room. This room had just told him exactly what it was. Miles down the county road, Marcus sat in his old sedan with the windows down. Cicadas roared in the dark fields. The Gala lights pulsed faint over the tree line behind him. He peeled the photo from inside his shirt and set it on the dashboard. His mother smiled at him from a marble hallway, a lifetime away. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the phone. Natalie Brooks answered on the second ring. She was the kind of lawyer who slept with one eye on her inbox. Marcus, it's late. I know. I'm sorry. A pause. You don't sound sorry. You sound decided. Marcus watched a moth circle the dome light. Move the closing to tomorrow morning, he said. First thing, and call an emergency board session for Monday. Natalie went quiet for several seconds. What happened tonight? I got fired. You got... Marcus, you own the place soon. Who fired you? And the answer is the same person who has been firing people like me for years. I watched it from inside. Tonight, I wore it. He touched the photo on the dashboard. Now, I'm done watching. The sellers expect the deal soon, Natalie said. Their lawyers won't like the rush. Then we make it worth liking. Offer the early signing bonus we discussed. Wire the difference. They'll come. Papers rustled on her end. A keyboard began to click. You realize what you're asking me to do in a short window? I do. You've had the documents ready. A short laugh escaped her. Yes, I have. All right, Mr. Hale. One more thing before she hung up. The board notice, Natalie said. It has to come from the new controlling shareholder. The moment I send it, people will start asking who Meridian Holdings is. Marcus looked through the windshield at the dark road ahead. Let them ask, he said. They had months to ask who I was. Nobody did. They have until the meeting to start wondering. While Marcus drove home, Sophie Ramirez sat on a bus bench, scrolling through her footage with cold hands. Every second of it sharp and steady. She watched the champagne fall in slow motion and felt sick all over again. She sent it to her group chat with the other servers, 3 words attached. Look at this. By the time the bus came, it had been forwarded many times. By the next morning, the video lived in hundreds of phones. Hartwell drivers watched it in break rooms. Office assistants watched it twice. A night guard at the tower watched it and thought about his own daughter. Nobody posted it publicly yet. Fear has a long leash in a company like that, but it moved underneath, hand to hand like water under a frozen river. Word of the video reached Kane on Sunday afternoon. He called Sophie's catering company and asked very politely for the names of everyone who worked the gala. Then he texted Vivian. Some staff filmed the event. Want me to handle it? Her reply took seconds. Handle what? I gave a master class. Let them watch it. Kane read the message twice, shrugged, and poured himself a drink. He was paid to follow orders, not to smell smoke. In a quiet law office, Marcus signed his name many times. The Hartwell Family Trust sold its stake. 2 institutional funds followed. When the last page slid across the table, Natalie Brooks capped her pen and looked at him. You now own the company that fired you. Marcus smelled bread baking through the floorboards. Funny, he said. It doesn't smell like a tower. At noon, the emails went out. Board members received the same message from a firm none of them knew. Meridian Holdings LLC, new controlling shareholder of Hartwell Logistics Group, requests an emergency session. Attendance mandatory. Agenda, leadership review. Within an hour, every phone on the board was ringing every other phone. Nobody had answers. Nobody knew the name. Nobody could find a face behind Meridian. Harold Whitaker read the email twice on his porch. Controlling shareholder. The Hartwell Trust had been quietly shopping its stake. He knew that. What he had not known was that someone had actually bought it. He thought about the gala, the champagne running down a man's collar, the way the janitor had stood there calm as deep water. Harold sat down his coffee and said to nobody, "The meeting can't come fast enough." Vivian spent her time curating the gala photos. She posted several of them. Her favorite showed her mid-speech, arm raised, lights blazing behind her. The caption read, "Giving back is who we are." She read the board email between posts and rolled her eyes. Leadership review. Some activist fund flexing its new shares. She decided she had eaten activist investors for breakfast before she approved her own talking points and ordered a car. There was one more item on her agenda, and it made her smile. Her own compensation package waiting for board approval. The gala photos would soften them up. The charity numbers would do the rest. She fell asleep early, certain that the meeting belonged to her. Miles away, a man in a small apartment ironed a charcoal suit and laid his mother's photograph on the table beside his cufflinks. The meeting day came up humid and gray. By early morning, the top floor smelled of coffee and nerves. Board members gathered in clusters, trading guesses in low voices. Harold Whitaker stood apart at the window, watching the city wake. The elevator chimed. Natalie Brooks stepped out first, briefcase in hand, and behind her came a man some of them almost recognized, in a charcoal suit, wearing a watch that did not tick. Vivian arrived shortly after, armor on, white suit, red folder, victory smile. She pushed through the boardroom doors, talking before she even looked up. "All right, let's make this quick. I have a company to run." Then she stopped. The room was full and silent. Board members sat along the table like jurors, and the chairman's chair at the far end stood turned toward the window, its back to the room. A woman she did not know stood at the head of the table. Charcoal dress, steady eyes, a stack of documents squared in front of her. "Miss Hargrove, Natalie Brooks, counsel for Meridian Holdings. Please take a seat." Vivian did not take a seat. "And Meridian Holdings is what exactly? A hedge fund? A pension raider?" "Whoever you are, you called a meeting in my boardroom." Natalie opened the folder without hurry. As of yesterday morning, Meridian Holdings completed the purchase of the majority of Hartwell Logistics Group, the Hartwell Family Trust, the pension funds, all signed, all filed, all final. She slid a single page down the table. "So, with respect, Miss Hargrove, this is not your boardroom anymore." Vivian's eyes flew down the page. Numbers, signatures, a seal. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Fine. Then where is he?" "The mystery owner. I'll negotiate with a principal, not a lawyer." Natalie almost smiled. "He's already here." The chairman's chair began to turn. It came around slowly, the leather creaking once, and the morning light fell on a charcoal suit, a quiet face, and a cracked leather watchband. "Good morning, Miss Hargrove," Marcus said. "Please sit. You look pale." The red folder slipped out of her hand and slapped the floor. For several seconds, nothing in the room moved. Then she laughed, one sharp note, because her mind had nowhere else to go. "You. How did you get into this boardroom?" "Security." 2 guards stepped inside the door. Neither of them moved toward Marcus. "They work for me now," Marcus said. "I own the majority of this company, your chair and your job." He let that settle. "Impossible," she whispered. "You're a janitor. I stayed long enough to see who you really are." He stood and walked the length of the table. "You once told hundreds of people that men like me clean messes. You were right. I'm here to clean the biggest one in this building." The board members were trading glances, and one finally said it out loud. "Hail, Atlas Freight." Marcus nodded once. "I built Atlas Freight from 2 trucks and a laptop." Sold it years ago for more money than I can spend. My mother cleaned this tower for decades. Eleanor Hale, night shift, East Hallway. He set her photograph on the table facing the room. She believed this company was worth her whole life. I came to find out if she was right. So I pushed a mop where she pushed hers. I wanted to know what this company looks like from the floor, not from a report. From the floor, I learned the drivers get shorted. I learned people disappear from schedules when they complain. And at the gala, I learned what the chief executive does to a man in a uniform when she thinks no one important is watching. Natalie lifted a small remote. The screen on the wall lit up, and there it was in high definition, with clean audio. The kneeling, the champagne tipped slowly all the way. Even the rag needs a rag. The firing. The bag turned out on the gravel. The photograph flicked away like trash. The footage played to a silent room. 2 board members could not finish watching it. Harold Whitaker watched every second, his hands folded, his knuckles white. When the screen went dark, Vivian found her voice. That's edited out of context. It was a private event, hundreds of guests and a microphone. Natalie said, "Which part was private?" Vivian spun toward the board. "You've known me for years. You've seen my numbers. You cannot seriously let a stunt like this." She stopped because she finally saw their faces. 7 faces. Not one of them was looking at her with anything she recognized. Harold Whitaker rose from his seat with a printed contract in his hand. "Miss Hargrove, Section 12 of your employment agreement. The conduct clause." He read slowly, the way men read verdicts. "Any public behavior that brings material disrepute to the company or its people constitutes grounds for termination for cause." He set the contract down. "I was at that gala. I watched you pour champagne on an employee's head in front of senators." The room tilted around Vivian Hargrove. The bonus folder lay on the floor by her shoe, suddenly belonging to another lifetime. Marcus returned to the chairman's seat and rested his hands on the table, calm as a quiet morning. "Members of the board," he said, "Meridian Holdings calls for a vote on the immediate termination of the chief executive officer for cause." He looked at her and his voice did not rise at all. "You wanted everyone to watch, so we'll do this the same way, in the open." Vivian moved fast, the way a drowning person grabs at anything floating. The laughter came first. "Okay, all right. This is theater. You hired actors." "Harold, did he pay you to—" Nobody blinked. The laughter died in her throat. Then came the pivot, smooth as oil. "Mr. Hale, the event. I had been drinking. The stress of the gala. You understand how these events get. I poured my heart into that night, into this company." Her voice found its boardroom polish again. "If I had known who you were, I would never have—" She heard it leave her mouth. Everyone heard it. The sentence hung in the air like a confession because that is exactly what it was. Marcus nodded slowly. "There it is," he said. "That's the problem, Miss Hargrove. You needed to know who I was to treat me like a human." He tapped the photograph on the table. "My mother worked here for decades. Nobody important ever knew who she was either. Imagine how she was treated. Or don't imagine. We just watched the footage." Natalie called the vote. "All in favor of terminating the chief executive for cause effective immediately." Harold's hand went up first, then the woman beside him, then the next. 7 hands, one by one, around the table. Natalie recorded each name without expression. Unanimous termination for cause. All severance, all bonuses, and all unvested shares are forfeit. The bonus folder stayed on the floor where it had fallen. "Then you can't do this. I built this company's growth. I am this company." Her voice climbed. "I'll sue all of you." "You're welcome to," Natalie said pleasantly. Discovery would include the video, the search at the gate, and years of personnel files. "Please sue." Vivian's mouth worked, but the math was already happening behind her eyes. Lawyers love that math. Defendants never do. Marcus turned to the door. "Send in Mr. Kane." Victor Kane entered with his chin up, scanning the room. He saw the photograph on the table. He saw Marcus in the chairman's seat. The chin came down by degrees. "Mr. Kane," Marcus said, "at the gala you searched a man's property without cause on a public lawn on camera. You're suspended pending investigation." Badge and key card on the table. Kane looked at Vivian, waiting for the order that would fix this. She did not even see him. Whatever he had been to her, it had mattered only while it was useful. He unclipped the badge slowly, set it on the polished wood, and laid the keycard beside it. Two small clicks in a silent room. On his way out, he paused at the door, but no words came. Some men only discover their voice was borrowed when it gets repossessed. Then it was her turn. Marcus did not raise his voice for it. Miss Hargrove, these gentlemen will walk you out. You may collect personal items from your office under supervision. Company property stays. The same two guards who had flanked Kane at the gala stepped forward. Her own security team, the ones who used to part crowds for her. One of them said quietly, "Ma'am, this way." The elevator ride down took many floors and a lifetime. When the doors opened on the lobby, the morning shift was arriving. Receptionists, drivers, two cleaners with a cart by the east hallway. Word had already traveled the way it always does in a tower. Bottom floor first. Nobody jeered. Nobody clapped. They simply stopped and looked and let her walk the full length of the marble in heels that suddenly sounded very loud. Halfway across, her heel caught the wet edge of a freshly mopped section. She did not fall, but she had to grab the rope of a velvet stanchion to stay up, and a cardboard sign stood beside the spot, yellow and ordinary. Caution, wet floor. The cleaner who had placed it looked away politely. Vivian Hargrove straightened herself, walked the last stretch, and pushed through the revolving doors into a city that no longer worked for her. Upstairs, the boardroom exhaled. Harold Whitaker shook Marcus's hand and held it a moment longer than business requires. "Your mother," he said. "I think I remember her. East hallway. She used to hum." Marcus smiled for the first time that morning. "Every night," he said. "Mostly gospel. She said marble carries a tune better than any church." Outside the glass, the city went on, not yet knowing the story it would be telling soon. The video broke the surface. A local station ran part of it, with the faces of guests blurred. Soon the full footage sat on every platform that mattered. The clip of champagne falling on a kneeling man had been watched millions of times. The caption most people shared was simple. "The janitor she fired owned the company." National morning shows picked it up. They played the kneeling. They played even "The rag needs a rag." Then they played the boardroom statement Hartwell released. 4 sentences, no adjectives, signed by the new chairman. Anchors read it twice because it said so much by saying so little. Effective immediately, Vivian Hargrove no longer speaks for this company. Hartwell apologizes to its employees, its drivers, and every person who has ever worn its uniform. Her charity collapsed faster than her career. The foundation's biggest sponsors withdrew, each with the same polished regret. A hotel chain, a bank, an airline. The senator from the Gala released a statement saying he had attended briefly and left early. Photographs proved otherwise, and the internet enjoyed proving it. The Hargrove Foundation website went down for maintenance. It never came back up. Inside the tower, Natalie Brooks opened the books. Marcus gave her one instruction: follow everything, no matter whose name it touches. Her team pulled years of personnel files, termination records, and charity ledgers. They worked nights in a conference room that smelled of cold coffee and printer toner. Inside Hartwell, something else loosened. People started talking. The drivers who had been shorted on overtime filed their records. The stairwell dispatcher sent an email she had been drafting in her head for years. Old fear takes time to die, but it dies faster when the man at the top once wore the uniform. By the end of the month, the tip line had logged many messages. The pattern surfaced, terminations over the years. Every one of them a Black or Latino employee. Everyone labeled restructuring. A dispatcher fired days after reporting a slur. A warehouse lead let go 1 month before his pension vested. A receptionist dismissed for tone after asking about equal pay. The same signature at the bottom of each one, V. Hargrove. The charity ledgers told their own story. The gala that raised millions for underprivileged children had delivered far less to any child anywhere. The rest dissolved into event costs, consulting fees, and a yacht rental invoiced as outreach. The yacht with her mother's name on the stern. Natalie laid the invoices side by side on the boardroom table and said only one word: enough. The affected employees began to come forward, one phone call at a time. Some were angry, some were tired. One, the dispatcher, cried on the phone for a full minute before she could speak. Hartwell did not hide behind lawyers. Marcus met several of them in person in the same boardroom with the same chair. Each meeting started with the same sentence: the company owes you an apology and the company pays its debts. For Vivian personally, the law moved on 2 fronts. The employees filed a joint civil suit, naming her as an individual defendant alongside the federal complaint. Her old defense that the company made those decisions died in depositions because the company was now the one handing over the evidence. Hartwell waived privilege on every memo she had ever written. Few sights in law are stranger than a corporation testifying against its own former queen. Victor Kane chose the only door left to him. He sat for a sworn deposition in exchange for a softer landing. Yes, the order to search Marcus Hale's bag came directly from Miss Hargrove. Yes, there had been other orders over the years. He listed them in a flat voice, naming names, while a court reporter's keyboard clicked like rain on tin. It never reached a jury. Months after the gala, Vivian Hargrove settled everything at once. The numbers stayed sealed, but the conditions did not. A public apology written and spoken on camera, personal payments to all affected, repayment of every misused charity dollar, and a consent agreement barring her from serving as an officer or director of any public company for years. Her lawyers called it prudent. Everyone else called it what it was. The apology aired. Vivian sat at a bare table, no jewelry, reading from a page her lawyers had approved, word by word. I treated a man as less than human because of his uniform and his skin. No stress excuses that. No glass of champagne excuses that. I was not drunk on wine that night. I was drunk on power. For once, nobody doubted she had written that last line herself. There was no prison sentence, and there did not need to be. What Vivian lost was the only thing she had ever actually owned. The room. Every room. The tables stopped having a head for her to sit at. The invitations stopped. The cameras pointed elsewhere. She sold the estate with the oak trees and moved somewhere quieter, where for the first time in her life, she was simply a person in line like everyone else. While her name shrank, the company grew lighter. Hartwell paid back every shorted hour of driver overtime with interest. Schedules stopped eating people who complained. The affected employees got more than checks. Several of them got their jobs back with promotions and back pay. The dispatcher who had cried on the phone now ran the department that once erased her. And Sophie Ramirez, the young woman with the steady hands, got a phone call from Natalie Brooks. Her video had been licensed by the networks, and the licensing fees belonged to her. The number on the check was larger than years of catering shifts. Attached to it was a note in careful handwriting. You kept the camera still when grown men kept their heads down. Hartwell would like to discuss your tuition. Late that fall, a business magazine ran the whole saga under a single photograph. Not of Vivian, not even of Marcus in the chairman's seat. The editors chose the frame from Sophie's video where a man kneels on a white carpet, champagne shining in his hair, back straight as a flagpole. The headline underneath ran 6 words. He was never the one kneeling. Months after the gala, the Hartwell Tower looked the same from the street. Inside, almost nothing was. The glass elevator and the steel elevator still ran side by side, but the pay stubs riding in them had changed. Janitorial staff got a significant raise. Security, the kitchen, the loading dock, all of them. When a reporter asked Marcus why he started with the lowest paid floors, he shrugged. Because I've ridden both elevators. Only one of them needed fixing. There is a name for what happened at Hartwell now. New hires hear it during orientation told plainly. No slides, no music. They watch minutes of the gala video, then the boardroom statement. A trainer stands up front and says the same thing every time. This is the only time you will ever see a person treated that way at this company. If you see it twice, you call me. If I don't act, you call him. The boardroom changed too. Every month, one seat at the table belonged to a frontline employee. A driver one month, a cleaner the next. They did not come to listen. They came with the floor's questions, and the floor got answers. Harold Whitaker, now lead director, called it the cheapest consulting the company had ever bought. The stock finished the year up significantly. In time, the company gathered in the lobby for an unveiling. A small bronze plaque now sat on the wall of the east hallway, at the exact spot where a night cleaner used to hum gospel to the marble. The Eleanor Hale Scholarship, full tuition every year for children of service workers, cleaners' kids, security guards' kids, kitchen kids. The first class had many names. The first name read aloud was Sophie Ramirez. The Gala estate has a new purpose too. Hartwell bought it outright. No more auctions under the oak trees. Every summer now, the lawn hosts the company picnic and the families of many employees eat barbecue where the string quartet used to play. Kids run across the lawn. Nobody checks anybody's bag at the gate. Sophie stood at the little podium in her catering flats and unfolded a piece of paper she never managed to read. She looked at Marcus instead. "You said you only remember the birthdays that matter," she said, "which is everybody's. I get it now." It was not much of a speech. The lobby applauded like it was. In the back, two cleaners leaned on their cart, and one of them wiped her eyes with a glove. And Marcus. Most mornings, if you came in early enough, you could still find him in the lobby. Suit jacket on a chair, sleeves rolled, running a mop along the east hallway, in long, patient strokes right beside his mother's plaque. The first time a new hire saw it, she stopped dead and whispered to the guard, "Is that the chairman?" Mr. Ellis smiled. "That's the janitor who owns the place. Around here, those are the same thing." The watch on his wrist still does not tick. He never fixed it, and he never will. Some mornings he catches the light on its cracked band and hears a hum from a marble hallway decades deep. Time does not need to move for a promise to be kept. Real talk. I told this story for one reason. Somewhere tonight, somebody in a uniform is getting talked down to by somebody in a suit, and I need you to remember which one of them owned the room. Worth doesn't come with a title. It never did. So here's my question for you, and I really want to know. If you were Marcus standing there with champagne running down your neck knowing you could end her career with one sentence, would you have stayed silent until the meeting, or would you have said it right there? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them. All of them. And if this story hit you anywhere at all, share it with someone who wears a uniform to work. A cleaner, a guard, a server, a driver. Let them know somebody sees them. Then subscribe and turn on notifications, because stories like this one drop here every single week. And the next one might be about somebody you know. Until then, keep your head up and your spine straight, just like Marcus.